Welcome to this special Italian wine podcast broadcast. This episode is a recording off Clubhouse, the popular drop-in audio chat. This Clubhouse session was taken from the Wine Business Club and Italian Wine Club. Listen in as wine lovers and experts alike engage in some great conversation on a range of topics in wine. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinepodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. And remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in. So, welcome to Clubhouse Ambassador's Corner. My name is Joy Livingston, and I'm standing in for Stevie Kim, who is in Tuscany. She's on her way back, but the internet is a bit spotty, so I'm just stepping in for today. Today we have Pierluca Proietti of Abbianova, who will be interviewed by Ashlee Howell. Ashlee, are you there?
Good morning or good evening. I'm here.
Wonderful. Nice to hear your voice.
Likewise, Joy.
So I'm just going to give you a quick intro. Before we start, I just wanted to talk about the show. This is the 31st show that we've done for the Ambassador's Corner. It's been super popular. Every single one has been replayed on the podcast, the Italian Wine Podcast, and it does really, really well because I'm sure you've heard Stevie say a bunch of times that, Clubhouse has sort of waned in popularity after the pandemic sort of has been getting better. But when we put it on the podcast, it gets amazing listens. And so it's also great because people who can't tune in this time can listen to it whenever they like, which is wonderful all over the world. So it's for, via community members, it's for Italian wine lovers, it's for pretty much everyone who is interested in wine, because this is a really interesting way to get people together from all parts of the world and talk about wine. So Ashlee is going to be she will introduce Pierluca, but I'm just going to quickly introduce Ashlee. She is from Vancouver. She's been doing many things. She's been in many roles in the wine trade over the past 10 years. She's been a sommelier, to a consultant, to a buyer. She holds DipWSET qualification, French and Italian wine scholar certifications, and is a Vinitaly International Academy Italian wine ambassador. That's actually where I first met you. And after spending half of 2019 in Italy, fully submerged in the culture, the vineyards, the language, the wine, the way of life, she returned to Vancouver to share the best kept secret amongst Italy's highest quality niche producers. So I did not know that you had returned to Vancouver. You're also, before I start talking to you, you're a freelance writer, and you've done a lot of, you're always looking to travel and discover new wines. Actually, I thought you were still in Italy. I did not realize that you had returned to Vancouver. How was your time?
Oh, it was amazing. But I've been kind of going back and forth whenever COVID doesn't get in my way. So that might be why you didn't think I came back, because as soon as I come back, I'd be gone again.
I just recall before you left, we were talking, and you were trying to get organized and everything. And it was, I'm glad that you actually did it in the end. And I knew that you had, but I thought you were still here. So how are things otherwise?
No, things are great. With COVID this past couple months, business has been a little bit slow, but restrictions were just lifted last week. So things are looking really good. From this weekend up until end of March, when I leave to come back to Italy, I have over 40 tasting events and meetings. So I'll be really busy.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, I hope we'll see each other when you get here. Before I hand you over to Pierluca, I wanted to just ask you, because of course we want to know what educational value we're going to get from this meeting. So tell us why you selected Pierluca Proietti as your favorite producer.
It was really hard trying to decide which producer to select, because I respect and I love so many, and especially all of my suppliers. I have that kind of relationship with. But this past November, finally getting to meet Pierluca and Daniele and Barbara of Abia Nova experience was just one of the best ones I've ever had with any winery, not even anyone that I work with. So I definitely wanted to choose him. I wanted his story to get out. He is such an interesting gentleman. He's like one of those special individuals that you rarely get the opportunity to cross paths with. Yeah, he's talented, he's dedicated, and he has the biggest heart. I always learn so much from him, both in our Zoom calls and in person. And his wines of Abia Nova really speak for themselves. They have poise, they have flair, they're authentic. And his project and his wines and his way of farming and living really became a place that my heart resides with. Like even when I first met him, he drove to my exit to meet me in Aniani. I had driven from Verona all the way to Pidio, and it was really late. It was 2 a.m. and he even drove home to get me a cup so I could have tea before bed. So I think that really speaks for the type of person that he is.
Wow, that's pretty nice. That's awesome.
As far as learning objectives,
Go ahead.
I mean, I really hope that the audience becomes enlightened and informed and a little bit more curious about what's going on in Lazio, because I feel like sometimes that area gets overlooked. And yeah, like his way of doing farming, like the art of doing nothing, is really interesting, and it will kind of leave you like stripped of your path preconceived understandings of what it really means to be working in harmony with nature.
Cool. And what so how did you discover the wines of Abia Nova? Like, when did you first taste them and say, wow, this is really great, I want to go there?
My discovery of them was completely unexpected and very much by chance. I was first contacted by them on Instagram in late 2020, and I was just in the early stages of my importing business. So all my pallets were still on the way. I wasn't really looking to expand or grow when I hadn't even sold anything yet. And I've always loved Chiesnese and been so curious about it because what's available in my market is pretty null. There's only one bottle and it's not anything exciting. And then when I spoke to them and I got to learn what they were doing with their Fukuoka method and biodynamic based raw wines, I couldn't say no to a case of samples. I was so curious. And I instantly fell in love with them. I couldn't say no. And that's kind of how it started.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing this this interview. Pierluca, are you there?
Hi everyone, I'm here.
Hi.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon. So I'm gonna hand you over here to Ashlee, and at the end, there may not be time for questions, depending on how long this goes, because we typically like to close the room after about an hour. And yeah, until then, Ashlee, take it away.
Thanks, Joy. Ciao, Pierluca. How are you?
Good, how Ashlee?
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
For most of the audience, you probably know Pierluca as one of the owners of Abia Nova. He also works with his cousin Daniele, and they work with this fabulous woman named Barbara. But he's got quite an interesting past. Pierluca kind of started out as an agricultural entrepreneur, and he's worked for many different research centers and companies throughout Italy, and later on developing commercial strategies for farms and wineries. He also teaches, and in Perel has worked for the Professorship of History of Science in Rome's University, La Sapienza, and has worked for the Italian Encyclopedic Institute. But today he deals mainly with the viticultural management of the family winery Abia Nova. So I'm going to start off with my first question for Pierluca, just to kind of get everyone familiar with what's going on with Abia Nova. So can you share with us the history of your winery through to the evolution of today?
Okay. Hi everyone. History is a little bit complex because, as you said, I studied and then I was, in the university in studying history of science. At the same time, from the early 80s, my father started this hobby of buying old vineyards in Piglio and also planted new vineyards. So I was involved as a weekend hobby in viticulture until the early 80s. I was 6 years old when I planted with my father my first vineyard. But then when I studied philosophy and history of science at the same time, I used to work more and more in agriculture with my father, and he was so passionate by the new movement of the biological agriculture, and I'm talking about the late 80s. And at the same time, my cousin started his degree in winemaking and enology in Parma. And we talk about a lot of times of start making wines, but we just wanted to focus on different kind of viticulture that we could do in our places. We did a lot of courses on natural agriculture, Fukuoka method, biodynamic agriculture in the 90s and first year between 2000, 2005. And after his degree, my cousin came back in Piglio and started as a director of the social cellar, the country winery that we have in our town. And this was the beginning of our history because he had there a lot of beds of different materials to do a lot of experiments from different crews that time we yet had in our company. I'm talking about 2005. So So I'm talking about the years between 2005 and 2009. Me and my cousin did a lot of experiments into the social cellar that where my cousin was the director. Different kind of fermentations, double fermentations. We tried on one hand to respect the tradition, at the same time to do new things with our wine grapes. And we cultivated traditional wine grapes from Lazio, Cesanese, and Passerina, and we didn't have so much literature about them. So we need to explore new phases of those wine grapes in a small time. We did fermentations in wood, in different kind of woods, in steel, in concrete, in cement, and then in jar, in glass. And this was the period that we used to wait until opening our new project, our project. Uh, we spent about 5 years, 6 years, and in 2013, after 2 years, between 2011 and 2013, I left Piglio to join an experience in Tenuta di Trinoro with Andrea Franchetti. Then I came back and we started Abbianova. At that time, we had all the crews, not so much as today. Now we have about 7 crews, and we are improving other small vineyards and small parcels. And at the same time, we realized that we had the right experience to 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 manage different kind of natural fermentation. The period that we spent in the social cellar was to be more confident with making right wines. I use this word, right wines, correct wines, linear wines, making different kind of natural agricultures in the vineyards, and at the same time to ferment the grapes and age the wines with no ads. And that's all. That's all from as a chronicle, so a history, a straight history of Abbianova. We started in 2013, but we started before in 1981 when we were a child.
Thank you so much, Pierluca. I just want to recommend a book just to the audience really quickly. If anyone wants to read a bit more on the method that Pierluca really kind of has based a lot of his agricultural practices off of, it's called The One Star Revolution. And Pierluca recommended it to me, and it's just a fantastic book, and it really opens up your eyes to so many things. So Pierluca, I know you started with your dad, like as a child in the vineyard, but when did you really discover that your calling in life was to be in wine, that this is what you wanted to do?
Probably there were 2 times in my life. The first time was in 1997 when a small producer from a small town near Piglio brought me a bottle of Cesanese of 1981. Until that time, I thought that Cesanese could not be a wine for long aging. And for some point of view, this is what I think right now. But sometimes you could find beautiful gems, and I mean, with beautiful gems, I mean beautiful small parcels, which could give you really long aging wine. At the same time, the other important things to discover that my life was called to be in wine was when in 2002 I met Alessandro Masnaghetti. I was involved in wine. I had all my degrees by the Associazione Italiana Sommelier as a taster. But reading for the first time his guide in 2002 was a kind of eureka for me because he wrote in a different way about wine and using words that could express something more than a straight description of the flavors. And when I met him, I found that something could be done also in this place. As I said, I was a taster. I tasted a lot of beautiful wines from all over Italy, from France. I was really enthusiastic about, the great name that we have in Italy. But I didn't think the time that me in that small uncommon place with this kind of wine grapes could do, good wines, fine wines. And yeah, I remember this two times. Just two times I discovered that I could be involved in wine.
Thank you, Pierluca. Now, I kind of have a question that ties into my next question I had planned to ask you. But you were talking about how, you weren't really thinking that Cesanese could be a grape to age for a long time, but with, really special, individualistic parcels of land that can produce special wines, this can happen. Now, I know with the small, different single vineyards that you work with, you do have a different variety of soil types. Now, is there some that you think are better than others and have longer potential for aging? I know they're all so very different, but what is your take on that?
Well, Cesanese, yeah, I need a little hat about Cesanese and Passerina and about the soil, the general soil that we have. We are on a volcanic soil, and in this kind of soil, the fruits to be eaten are really good. But when you have to face yourself with fruits that have to be has to be fermented, they have to be fermented. Sorry. Um, Now there's a problem because the pH and acidity in a volcanic soil, dance too much. In particular, before 15 days, 20 days before harvesting. And when you compare your wines on a volcanic soil with the great wines all over the world, you see that you need acidity, you need strong tannins sometimes, and at the same time you need low pH. And this is good for long aging. So we try to all over the year to do something into the soil in a natural way, just to give all those wine grapes that we have the strength to be aged and not so sweet. Because another adjective of the wines from a volcanic soil is that the flavors in the mouth is something too much sweet. At the same time, when you work with parcels, so when you work with crews, you realize that even if you are in a general volcanic soil, not every place is similar to the other. And we started in 1995, and we started in 2005, as I said before, to ferment grapes from old vineyards from all over the town of Piggio. And in 5 years, we realized that in some places, when in particular there are more rocks into the soil with the volcanic clay that we have, the wines could have more chances to be, similar to the great wines of the world that we know, a big potential of aging, and at the same time, a sweetness which is not sweet, uh, a sweetness which is, to be soft, kind of softness in the mouth with the violet flavors all around your nose. And this was the skeleton of our point of view on the aged Cesanese and of the aged Cesanese. And that's why we used to ferment separately all the parcels, and all the parcels we have more or less potential to be aged. Consider that also we used to pick some other small parcels into the cruise that we have, because we realized that in every single parcel we have some plants more, mm, more, they were better for this idea of cruise as a long aged Cesanese or Passerina. At the same time, the oldest wine grapes that we have, so the ones that were planted here during the Roman Empire and the medieval ages, they also have a big potential, but only when they are blended into the classic bottle of Cesanese del Piglio or Passerina del Frusinate. And we realized that the picture of the old vineyards that we have and all the old vineyards that are in Piglio are a kind of picture of the best one you can do from these places. So the right percentage of plants into the vineyards is the right percentage of the wine into a bottle. Usually 80% of the main wine grapes, so Cesanese or Passerina, and the rest of the other ancient, oldest wine grapes that helps, the Cesanese and Passerina to be great in an aging point of view.
Thank you, Pierluca. Now, I know you mostly work with Cesanese da File, but you do have a little bit of Cesanese Nostrano on your parcel single vineyard Berlame Cru that you use to make your rosé. Now, maybe can you talk a little bit about the types of wines that come from a sandy soil rather than the rest being all volcanic based? And are you considering planting more Cesanese Nostrano? It's not really seen very much, and it's very much kind of like a lightly resurrected grape.
Oh yeah, Berlame Cru. I planted Berlame Cru in 2002 for this reason, because this parcel, this place in Piglio, is one of the few ones with no volcanic soil. It's a sandy beach, kind of beach soil, and by the Imperial Nerva was called the lake. That's why the sandy soil and not volcanic soil there. And me and my father bought this place in 2000 and 2002. I started planting those 2 hectares, and at the same time we rediscovered what is called here Cesanese Nostrano. As I said before, was one of the additive wine grapes to the Cesanese da File. But Cesanese Nostrano is one of the father of the Sangiovese. It is also called in ampelography Maiolica, and you can also find other plants south of Marche. That's the reason is that just like the Passerina, the Cesanese Nostrano was so the Maiolica was planted
by the popes. So we are talking about not the Roman Empire, but the medieval ages. And they used to plant Passerina and Cesanese Nostrano there in south of Marche on that kind of clay, which is similar to the central Italy clay, just like in Umbria and Tuscany. And they realized that Cesanese could not work in that kind of clay. But the Cesanese Nostrano is really interesting because it gives to the wine more acidity, more power, and his tannins are really similar to the Sangiovese. And when you, as I said before, when you make a picture of an old vineyard in Piglio, you find a lot of plants in that 15% of Cesanese Nostrano. When we replanted the Cesanese Nostrano, we realized we really like the rosé wines all over the world. And our first aim was to make a good rosé. And our first Cesanese, so our first bottle was a rosé. And after some experiments, we realized that 0.5% of Cesanese da Fila and 0.5% of Cesanese Nostrano could be the right blend, a modern blend of making a rosé with not so sweetness, but at the same time with a rose tannin to be similar to a white, and at the same time to a light red. About your question of planting new vineyards, yes, we are planting now other 3 hectares in 2 years and 5 hectares and a half so total in 6 years. And we are focused on different places. If we follow what I was talking about before, the fact that the quantity of potassium in a volcanic clay soil, it's a kind of problem to make long aging wine or not so sweet wines. We are focusing on the mountains that we have on our shoulder. The main mountain is the Monte Scalambra, which is the first mountain before the Apennines, so before the border with the Abruzzo region. And we are focusing on some places on the mountain at 1,000 meters high of altitude with a lot of rocks inside, just because we want to see what is the reaction of the plant at the same time of the grape, so the pH and acidity, on a different kind of soil with volcano soil inside. So the answer is yes, we are in a continuous. We're always think about plant new vineyards because we just want to see all the phases of Cesanese in places where they didn't used to plant until 20 or 30 years before.
Thank you, Pierluca. Now, when I was there in November, it was very humid and a little bit unusual. Like you were telling me, the past few years have been getting warmer with kind of strange vegetation kind of growing up. Now, how do you feel about climate change and like the recent vintage variations in general? And how do they impact your decision as a winemaker in both the winery and the vineyard, and what can consumers expect?
I remember that we really talk a lot about the climate change. The climate change is a fact. It's a global fact. But as we said in November, every small region has its consequences on the climate by the climate change. So in our place in south of Lazio, the consequences of climate change are quite different from what is happening now in Piedmont or in Veneto or in Emilia Romagna. What happened here in the last 20 years? Yes, a lot of humidity, more than before. The same temperature differences between night and day, but at the same time, whole temperature increase of about 5, 6, 7 degrees. So if 20 years ago you have during the summer 13 during the night and 33 maximum during the day, now you have the same difference. So 20, but 19, 20, and humid during the night and 40 during the day. At the same time, wet, wet, wet. And we have all the summers with 1 or 2 hours of rain in the afternoon. And this is not a problem for the plants, for the diseases, for the mildews. It's not a problem for us. And probably I can explain you why it's not a problem for us. The problem is that the soil reacts in a different way to the wet. And I think that we found a solution of the consequences of climate changes on our place. We used to take care more of the soil than before with some practices that we experimented in the last 5-10 years. At first, to use green manure more than usual manure for the soil, to let the soil be less wet than the weather upside. And at the same time, we started making our own biofertilizers with some micro elements fermented with milk. So a lactic fermentation with no ads, just like you found in all the products you can find on the market. And at the same time, we used to respect the plant more than before. So during the pruning, to prune less than before, to leave the green during the season more free than before. And this kind of approach helped us. We are looking at how the plants are reacting now to what we are doing on them. And this was what we did to face the kind of climate change we have in our place. And about the consumer and about how our wines, how Cesanese are changing into the glass. I can say that the first big difference in contemporary fermented Cesanese is the high degree of alcohol. If you are not acting on the plants in a natural but conscious way. So the danger is to make wine of 15, 16, 17 degrees alcohol. It's so easy to do that if you don't take care of the plants in a right way. And I mean, I don't want to make 13 or 13.5 degree alcohol wine just because the market requires it from me, but because I don't like those kind of wines because they are not balanced. They are not balanced because the plants are not balanced in facing the climate change. And what is in our bottle now after this climate change? Not the same wine. The wines are, they show themselves more than in the past. They show more themselves, and you can feel them ready before. Yeah, more ready than before. More ready than before. Ready to drink. So that's why it's more difficult now to find the right plants to do a long aged wine. It's more difficult. But if you have some theories to apply, different kind of theories to apply on our plants, and I mean natural natural theories about agriculture. You can face the change at first to protect the plants, and then the consequences is that the wine could express itself at the same way. It's different from 20 years ago, but it's expressive, and this is the most important thing. I think that the customers and the consumers all over the world want to feel different kind of expressions of the wines, because wine has to tell them something which is global, but comes from a small window, from a small place, just like the place where we live.
Thank you, Pierluca. I mean, that is right to say because, for example, I have the crus in my market that are only a couple of years old and they're already released and now getting into the next vintage, which is unheard of in most other areas for a cru to be released 2 years after it was picked. Like, where do you see a Bianova going in, say, 5 years in terms of styles and volumes produced?
Well, about the styles, I don't know. About the Cesanese style, the Cesanese style, I think that we started a good path of, looking at this wine grape about 5-6 years ago, and probably we are going to go on this path because we like it. Probably the last thing, though, I think one of the best thing that we made 3-4 years ago was the entry level wine, and was really hard for us to make this kind of wine because it's a blend of all crus picked before the right time for the harvest is the Senza Vandalismi. And Senza Vandalismi, showed us another path to follow for the daily wines, and is in line with the tradition of these places. Probably in 5 years, after those first years where we try to discover the skeleton of the wine grapes that we work with, and that's why we started with Rosato, because really it's a skeleton of the wine grape we work with. Probably after this, the same job made on the Passerina, we are going to express more the the, the complexity which lives inside the Passerina, making more skin contact wines on this wine grape. I mean, not orange wine. I mean, more contact, and it depends on the vintages. So this is what I see in the next 5 years. So more crus from Rosato, and at the same time, more skin contact white wines, because now we have the experience to do that. I really disagree with people who at the first vintage want to make orange wine just because it's a skin contact, and it's orange. It's a kind of mix between a white and a red. I don't like this philosophy. I really like to do an expressive wine, and I think that Passerina needs more skin contact if you want to express it's at a better stage. At the same time, as I said before, I look at a Bianova as a winery. Yeah, I'm sure with more parcels, with more uncommon place to plant. So on the mountain, on the rocks, just because now the climate change requires this. And at the same time, I just would like to feel, and probably this is uncommon for this modern drinkable wine era. I just want more muscles on the wines. So I'm, I'm thinking about the old-fashioned way of making wine in the 90s, also for the Cesanese. I would like to find a way of dynamic wines, even if they are more materic. So there's more with more things inside. So they have to be drinkable, but at the same time powerful. Kind of contemporary way of looking at the powerful wine. And then about agronomy point of view, it's what we started about 1 year and a half ago. As you said, we used to mix a lot of agricultures together, and it's a path that we are following. So we have no receipts. We studied a lot and experimented a lot of different kind of agricultures and mixed them together all over the years. But from all those theories, we realized that there was one thing that we didn't do: to work also with animals as helpful things to understand better the link between soil and the sky. And if you read, a lot of manuals, contemporary manuals, but also the classical manuals from the Greek period to the medieval ages to Renaissance era, you will see that there is no agriculture without animals. And we realized studying that what you can see from chickens or sheep or cows free into the vineyards, or asking them help for your job. It's a vision of what is happening into the soil and into the plants, similar to you, so similar to human being. And I think that in 5 years you will find a lot of animals inside the vineyards and in our small aisles of vineyards that we have. And I'm really proud of this idea. I'm really excited to see how our job will change with all this helpful being with us, working with us.
Thank you, Pierluca. So which wine that you produce are you most proud of, and why?
Oh, it's a hard question. It's a hard question. My answer is temporary. In this period, I realized that the San Giovanni Cru, which is the oldest one, the oldest vineyard that we have, is a 9 years old vineyard. Probably is the one where I make the wine I'm most proud of, because everything at first, from an agriculture point of view, everything we did on this vineyard gave us a lot of exceptional results in terms of plants. And I'm talking about old plants. So when you talk about old plants, you talk about something where you can't face without, without lightness. And I saw this vineyard react from a lot of things that we did in it. And at the same time, I'm really proud of the fact that the soul of the wine from San Giovanni Cru is always the same. I mean, the soul. And I'm really proud of the fact that from this point of view, nature, if we can talk about nature, is not nature, because we're talking about agriculture, and agriculture is half nature and half human. But I'm really proud of the fact that nature answers to what you are doing on it, but at the same time, nature is the chief, and you find it into the wines. I mean, this reminds me a wine made by Andrea Franchetti on Mount Etna, is one of his contrade, one of his crew. It's called Rampante. Franchetti was a man with a really strength, was powerful as a person and powerful into the vineyards also, as a vineyardist also. And I realized that in Tenuta di Trinoro or in Passo Pisciaro, a lot of wines was really built on his personality. But when I tasted and when I taste Contrada Rampante, I found that there was a uh, really strength, really fight between the man and the old vineyard there. And at least even if you find his influence, so the influence of the man on the vineyard and on the wine, at the end, the wine is more powerful than the man. And he was proud of this wine. He was proud of this wine because the vineyard reacted to him as a human being.
Thank you for mentioning that, Pierluca. I was actually going to say the Cesanese that Franchetti took to Sicilia was from your San Giovanni vineyard, if that's correct.
Yeah, yes. Franchetti was one of my father's friends, and his father used to come a lot of time in Piglio during the after the First World War. He used to go to the mountains that we have on our shoulder, and used to bring with him in Rome bottles of Cesanese. Franchetti planted his first Cesanese vineyard in Tenuta di Trinoro in 1995, and between 1993 and 1994, he came about 15 times per summer to select the plants. He selected this beautiful muscle selection of plants from San Giovanni Vineyard and from other two small vineyards in Piglio and Anagni. The first one is owned by another, I think, one of the best winemaker that we have in Piglio, is Maria Ernesta Berucci, and she is making beautiful wines. The other vineyard is owned by an historical producer. His name is Antonello Coletti Conti. He's a kind of old style producer, but with different Cesanese from the wines that Abbianova or Maria make. But you will feel in that wine a lot of intention. So Franchetti came here to plant Cesanese first at Intermediate Noro. Then he cut the vineyard in 2001. And he made 3 vintages of this beautiful wine called Cincinnato, 97, 91, 2001, and then planted Cesanese on Mount Etna. And, it's reasonable. It's reasonable because Mount Etna is sandy volcanic soil. It's a high altitude, a lot of rocks, volcanic rocks. And now this vineyard is used to make the Franchetti, which is a blend of Cesanese da File, 90%, and 10% of Petit Verdot. And yeah, the selection was made here in Piglio.
Thank you. I figured that our VIA community would find that interesting, as we were just there in October on Mount Etna visiting Franchetti's winery. So Pierluca, I think I might already know the answer to this, but do consumer trends and opinions hold any place of value to you with the direction that you take with the Biennova?
I mean, probably not the trends, because if I translate trends in Italian, trend means something which is followed without thinking. So if trends mean that, no, I don't follow trends. At the same time, I follow a lot of opinions from all over the world. I really like people opinions. And opinions about my wines, opinions about what we are doing into the vineyard. If people find something which is not good or strange about, for example, this mixture of different kind of agricultures that we do, I really listen to them. It happens a lot of times. So opinions have a great place of value in our directions. But if I have to give you an example about the trends now in Italy or in other places in the world, there's a trend of drinkable wines, funky drinkable wines. Well, this has not place of value in our point of view because we only have this vision to make modern wines with a tool of tradition. And I'm sure that this word and the world of wine, of all the wine enthusiasts all over the world, could reserve a place for us, a small place. We need a small place. But if this small place is a place where, on one hand, me and my cousin who are doing this kind of job of transmit values, and at the same time, we have on the other end people who are really thirsty of values from the wine. Now it's perfect. At that time, it's perfect. So we know that we probably will not be the winery of thousand and thousand and 100,000 bottles, so fashionable wines. But at the same time, we know that our path to that we are following to make wine which transmits values, it's a good thing for people, enthusiasts, and people who want to find into the wine something more than a alcohol beverage. This is our direction. And as you know, when we started, we decided to share our experience in make this kind of wine in modern times, to share this experience all over the world. And we realized that in every place, in every city, there's there is people who answered to our questions that we put into our bottles. And that's all. It's our small vision of the world. And it's small because it comes from a small place with a long tradition. It's just like when you read books from different authors from different places, it's the same thing. It's to transmit values, and it's an aesthetic question. This is our point of view, and that's why we don't follow too much the trends, but we follow too much opinions of people.
Thank you, Pierluca. I love that. Something more than beverage alcohol. I mean, you're not a wine for everyone, but you're truly something special, and I think it really shows. Hopefully, if there's anyone in the audience that has not had the chance to try a Bianova, they're excited to go out and find some now. Pierluca, can you share with us briefly your olive oil project that you've been working on and that's finally ready for sale?
Oh, the olive oil project is an old project. Um, um, if I could have a step behind one of your first question, probably in the next 5 years, I will see a Bianova not only with a lot of animals, but also with other different cultures. Olive oil is the first, but then we have projects of making fermented herbs, and we experiment this kind of project started about 6 years, 7 years ago. We have here a long tradition of herbs from the monasteries that we have. And after tasting kombucha, we really like kombucha. We realized that with this kind of herbs that we have, we could match ourselves with making fermenting stuff from them. Now it's an experiment. But the olive oil is a standard tune for our places. And consider that I started before Appianova, I started making cruise of olive oil between 2000 and 2005. We own about 5 crews of olive oil with different varieties. The, the main one is called Marrone, which is the Itrana. It's probably the most common in Lazio. It's a beautiful variety. And then we have another good variety, which is the Rosciola, which is a delicate extra virgin olive oil, in opposite to the Itrana, which is really strong flavor with a lot of green flavor. And at the same time, we have the usual Italian central Italy varieties, just like Lecchino or also the Ascolana we have here. But the main aim of our project is to make cruise of olive oil, just like that, just like we the same as we do in our wines. When I made that in that 5 years between 2000 and 2005, I found a lot of differences between one and another parcel. And I thought my cousin about 6 years ago, when we realized that our process in making good wines is not complete, but is in a good stage. We need to start also the olive oil project. And I just want to discover other things making oil, because the classical tasting of the extra virgin olive oil is to feel freshness, is to feel the green balance. I just want to discover new path from this point of view. I just want to do. I just want to find what could be an oil with more oxidation, with a small fermentation, which is not good from a standard tasting. I just want to see what could happen, because it was a tradition here to make olive oil also that way, and that's why it's another time I kind of rediscover a tradition and see if this tradition with the aesthetic values could be shared with other people all over the world. And that's all. And we are restarting now with the olive oil, with our 2021 harvest. And we're gonna see what could happen next years.
Thank you so much, Pierluca. I'm going to give the mic over to Joy now, as I'm just about running out of time here.
Ciao, and happy birthday, Stevie. All right.
Happy birthday, Stevie.
Ciao.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, chin chin.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.